It's a story that starts with a dream of a better life, but it twists into a journey across the world and a promise that became, well, a deadly prison. Today, we're diving into a tragedy that would actually go on to change federal law. This is the price of an American dream, the murder of Laura Cruz. So let's set the scene. It's Boston, a brutally cold Sunday morning in January. We're at a luxury apartment building, and water is just dripping down from the 12th floor. The building superintendent, he gets the key, unlocks the door, and inside, it's just silent, pristine even. That is, until he sees the water seeping out from under the bathroom door. So he pushes it open, and that's when he finds her, a young woman, fully clothed, lying in the bathtub. And right there on the counter, there's a handwritten note. I mean, at first glance, it looks like a clear-cut suicide, right? But something is just immediately off. The English in the note, it's broken, almost childlike. And then you look at the victim's hands. There are wounds that tell a completely different story, a story about a fight for her life. So, was it really a suicide? Or was this the perfect cover for a murder committed by a man who wore a badge? Well, it didn't take long. Within just a few days, detectives confirmed their suspicions. This was no suicide. And their prime suspect? The victim's own husband. A man sworn to protect and serve. A detective with the Boston Police Department. Okay, so that brings us to our first section, a staged suicide. You might be wondering, how did investigators know almost right away that they were looking at a murder scene? Well, the answer is in the details, all the little things that just didn't add up. Yeah, the whole suicide story started to fall apart almost instantly. I mean, look at the scene. First, Laura Cruz, the victim, she's found fully clothed in the tub. A little strange, right? Then there's the note. The broken English just didn't match Laura's own writing. She was a university grad with flawless English. The biggest red flags, though, she had defensive wounds on her hands, and there were scratches, fresh scratches, on the prime suspect's forearms. This wasn't just a stage scene. It was a badly staged scene. Now, to really understand how a brilliant nursing student like Lara Cruz ended up in this situation, you have to understand the incredible pressure she was under. We're talking about the entire weight of her family's dream, and it was all resting on her shoulders. And this number right here, this is the key to the whole story. 850,000 Philippine pesos. That's the total amount her family managed to scrape together for her nursing education in America. For them, on their salaries, that was a debt that would take more than a decade to pay back. So you see, it wasn't just money. It was this absolutely crushing weight of expectation. And believe me, that number represents so much more than just cash. Her father, Roberto, who should have been retiring, went back to Saudi Arabia for grueling construction work just to pay her tuition. Her grandmother, Lola Rosa, pawned her gold wedding necklace, her most treasured possession, just for Laura's textbooks. The family sold off a half-hectare of their land and took on these high-interest loans. I mean, every single sacrifice had one name on it, Laura. She was their only hope. So with the threat of deportation and her family's financial ruin hanging over her head, Laura made a really desperate choice. This quote here, it's from an unsent message she drafted to her mom. It's just heartbreaking. "Mama, I'm scared. I just married a stranger, but he's going to pay my tuition. This is our only chance. Please pray for me." You can just feel her terror from the very beginning. She knew she wasn't just marrying a man, she was marrying a last-ditch solution to an absolutely impossible problem. So that brings us to the man himself, the officer with a promise. Who was this person who presented himself as the solution? The man who made a promise that would ultimately, tragically, cost Laura her life.
Well, his name was Detective Mark Callahan, and he basically had two faces. To the public, he was a hero. I mean, a decorated detective with 24 years on the force, featured in articles for fighting fraud, even served on the mayor's immigration task force. But the private man? That was a totally different story. A history of controlling behavior. He once put a GPS tracker on his ex-wife's car, and listen to this. He told his ex-wife, who was also a nurse, they'll believe a cop, not a nurse. I mean, talk about a chilling premonition of what was coming. So their paths finally crossed in December of 2023. Laura was at her breaking point, facing her family's financial ruin, and she actually contacted Callahan for some advice. And he saw his opening. He offered her a solution, what he called a business arrangement marriage. It sounds almost transactional, right? He gets to be married to her, and in return, he pays her tuition. For Lara, who was so desperate, it must have seemed like a lifeline. But that lifeline, well, it quickly tightened into a noose. That beautiful apartment with the harbor view, it became a prison with a view, meticulously designed and controlled by a man who knew exactly how to use his power to trap her. It was like he was following the abuser's playbook step by step, but with all the high-tech tools of a modern cop. First, he isolated her, demanded all her passwords, forced her to distance herself from her friends. Then he monitored her every move. We're talking spyware on her devices and a GPS tracker on her student ID. Then came the intimidation. He actually used police databases to investigate one of her classmates, a guy named Miguel. And finally, he basically imprisoned her. He installed a special lock on the apartment door that required a key to leave, even from the inside. And he weaponized his authority at every single turn. Just listen to his own words, which Lara secretly recorded. He told her, "I can make one phone call to ICE. I know everyone in this city. Who's going to believe you over a decorated Boston police detective? I own you." He said it right there, "I own you." He made it crystal clear. Her immigration status was his ultimate trump card. In his mind, she was his possession. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because even while she was trapped, isolated, and absolutely terrified, Lara found a way to fight back. She became what you could call a digital ghost, secretly creating a trail of evidence that would one day speak for her, even after she was gone. She fought back in the only way she could, secretly. She knew she couldn't go up against him openly. He was the police, after all. So she started documenting everything. She quietly built a case against her own husband, her own captor. She created this secret cloud account. She named it LAR Evidence 2024, and she started filling it up. There were 47 audio files of Mark's rages and his threats, screenshots of all his controlling text messages, detailed digital diary entries, and the most powerful piece of all, a final voice memo. She recorded it just hours before her death, and in it she literally names Mark Callahan as her potential killer. And that digital trail of breadcrumbs she left, it's what made sure Mark Callahan would not get away with murder. It led directly to his conviction and, ultimately, to a legacy for Lara. A legacy that now aims to protect other people from falling into the exact same trap. And then on November 3rd, 2024, in a moment of just gut-wrenching irony, a jury found Mark Callahan guilty of first-degree murder. That day, it would have been Lara's 25th birthday. It only took the jury 6 hours to see the truth that she had so carefully and so bravely preserved for them. Her story sent shockwaves across the country, and it led to real, tangible change. On March 15th, 2025, Lara's Law was signed. It's a federal law, prompted by her case, that requires things like enhanced screening and welfare checks for foreign nationals who are on marriage-based green card applications. The goal is simple: prevent predators from abusing vulnerable people. In a way, her suffering created a shield for so many others. Which really leaves us with one final and I think critical question. How does a dream of opportunity, a dream funded by a family's entire life savings, become a deadly trap? Lara's story is just a tragic reminder that systems designed to offer hope can be twisted into weapons by people in power. And it really forces us to ask ourselves, how can we do better? How can we protect the most vulnerable people among us, people who are really just chasing a dream?